Hello, everyone. This is the Daily Fantasy 5 for Wednesday, May 8th. This is episode 78, where we bring you everything you need to know in the world of fantasy sports today. And as always, we are brought to you by www.mathradio.com, where you can pick up an online math course for as little as $9.99 to help your child get better grades, do better on exams, and even get into college. Once again, that is www.mathradio.com. All right, we've got a lot to get to today. We are covering the NFC West draft recap. We also have some basketball injuries, some baseball players returning to the mound. Not returning to the mound, returning to the batter's cage. We have some basketball playoffs to talk about, daily fantasy basketball to talk about, and then we're going to recap the NFC West. All right, so let's get started with the Paul George news. So he had surgery to repair a partially torn rotator cuff, which is why he has stunk for the last month and a half. He's planning to miss training camp next year, but to be ready for the season. So this is bad news for dynasty owners who have Paul George, but I would recommend holding on to him right now. You'll probably only get 80 cents on the dollar, if that. So I would just go ahead and keep Paul George and just kind of deal with it and see what next year brings about, because if you try to trade him right now, you certainly will not get full value. All right. Moving on, let's talk about they are now the Los Angeles Angels. Ohtani has returned to action. He's not going to pitch this year after recovering from Tommy John surgery, but he is going to go ahead and bat. Yesterday, he went 0 for 4 with 1 RBI in his first action this season. Like I said, he's not expected to pitch this year. Last year, he hit 285 with 22 home runs and 61 RBIs in 367 plate appearances. So hopefully he can put up some nice numbers for you offensively. His value is certainly diminished since he is not pitching this year. All right, let's move over to the NBA and talk some playoff action. The terrible Boston Celtics are playing at the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks are a 9-point favorite in this one. Tip-off is 8 o'clock, and the over-under is 218. After the horrible night yesterday, we are down to +5 on the NBA playoffs as far as units for our wagering goes. For fantasy basketball, Roto Grinders has Mirotic rated at a 6.63 multiplier, which is the highest in this game, and he's going for $4,500. So what I think is going to happen tonight is that one team will win by double digits. I think that is either going to be Boston or Milwaukee. I think one of them just goes nuts and crushes the other team. I could see it really going either way. So what I kind of like in this matchup is to bet. Well, I'll talk about my Celtics pick later, but I like the Bucks minus the 9. Okay, I think if the Bucks win, they win by double digits. So the first wager I'm going to make on this game is Bucks minus 9. Now, I'm going to take the Celtics on the money line with a parlay later on. It's my all-road underdog parlay, okay? But let's save that for right now, and I'm not going to touch the over-under because who knows. So again, Roto Grinders is recommending you start Nikola Mirotic. All right. The late game tonight is Houston at Golden State. Golden State is a 6-point favorite, and that one is at 10:30. The over-under is 219.5. So the highest rated player on Roto Grinders for this game in terms of multiplier is Kevin Looney. He is at 6.59, and he's going for $3,700. We'll talk more about him later. Okay. From a wagering standpoint, I kind of like Houston in this matchup. They've won 2 straight, even though the home teams have won every game in this series. I still like Houston in this matchup. I think they're playing better basketball than Golden State is. So what I like is just take a flyer, all right? Give me the Celtics money line and the Rockets money line, all right, on a 2-team parlay, which pays a little bit over 12-1. Let's go ahead and shoot for the moon with this one. All right, hopefully we win that bet, and if not, hopefully the Bucks go ahead and do it. And what I would recommend is that if you get the Celtics part of this, right, you're going to have a 12-1 ticket going into that second game. Maybe go ahead and put some money on that Golden State money line just to hedge your way out of it. Okay, so that would be my little bet recommendation for tonight. But let's look at it from a fantasy perspective. So what this really comes down to tonight on our daily fantasy basketball lineups is going to be the small forward and power forward positions. So at small forward, you're pretty much going to have to decide who you want to start. Do you want to start Durant at 11,000 or Giannis at 12,500? Well, I'm going to go with Durant because I think the Milwaukee game is going to be a blowout either one way or the other. and Giannis isn't going to play the whole fourth quarter. All right, so that's my kind of prediction there. That's why I would lean away from Giannis and towards Durant. I think the Houston Golden State game is going to be much closer. Durant is going to have to be incredible if Golden State is going to win again because the Splash Brothers aren't doing anything. So at the small forward spot, I'm going to spend my big dollars on Durant. Okay, and then I'm probably going to try to throw in Harden as well so that I can get my two superstars out there, and they're going to be the the building blocks of my team in daily fantasy. So that brings us to the small forward. We talked about one already with the power forward now with Kevin Looney. He's the highest rated player on Roto Grinders from that game, but I don't like it at all. He's done nothing. I would much rather have Irsay Ilyasova. He's been much, much better this series, and he's only going for $4,400. That's only $700 more than Kevin Looney. So I would much rather have Ilyasova. And then if I'm going to start him, I'm going to pair him with either Tucker or Morris. Right, they're both having very similar numbers and very similar cost. So Tucker is going for $6,700. His last three games, he's been 31, 30, and 42. 42 the most recent. But the problem with Tucker is his cost has jumped up on FanDuel $900. Right, they went from $5,600 all the way up to $6,700. I'm sorry, $5,800 all the way up to $6,700. It's a huge jump. You're just not getting much value. But Marcus Morris has the same problem as well. His price jumped from $5,900 to $6,500. Okay. So, and in his last three games, he's been great as well. 29 points, 30 points, 37 points. I think I am leaning towards Morris simply because Morris just doesn't seem to care about anything. Elimination game, I don't think he cares. He wants to put up his shots. He's just going to go out there and go at it. He's not with the Celtics long term. This is the last year of his contract. This might be his last game with the Celtics. What does he care? He wants to go out there and put up numbers. Even if the Celtics are down by 15, 20 points in the second half, he'll still be out there gunning. So I'm going to go ahead and take Marcus Morris as my second power forward with Irsay Ilyasova, so I can get a pretty cheap option or a pretty cheap tandem at power forward with 4,400 and 6,500 would be what? 10,900. That's not bad at my power forward spot to kind of make up for my other superstars. So that is our daily fantasy portion of this show. We are now going to switch gears and go over to our draft recap. Again, we are doing the NFC West today, the draft recap. So we are going to start with my least favorite team, the San Francisco 49ers. All the other teams I really liked in this division. However, San Francisco was bloody awful. Okay, let's talk about it. So going into this, let's recap. So last year, the 49ers were 4-12, mostly because Jimmy G got injured. The very, very handsome quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, went down in the third game, I believe, of the season, so they had a lot of trouble. Their DVOA stats, they were 27th in offense, 23rd in defense. So they made a few late-round trades, but nothing crazy, okay? Heading into this draft, if I could give the 49ers two things, I would have given them a pass rusher, okay, a dominant pass rusher to play opposite D Ford, and then a quality wide receiver to play opposite of Kittle. Okay, they need another threat at the wide receiver spot. So in the first two rounds, I love what they did. They drafted Bosa at defensive end from Ohio State with the second overall pick. And then in round number 2, they drafted Deebo Samuel, wide receiver out of South Carolina. Now, is he my favorite wide receiver in this class? No, probably not. I think he might have come in 4th. But, that's fine for an early second-round pick to get the fourth best wide receiver. He might not be a huge contributor this year, but he seems like a solid bet. And, the San Francisco 49ers know a lot more about, who they want to draft than I do, right? Deebo could be the best wide receiver in the class. Who knows? Okay, I like the philosophy of the first two picks to get Bosa and Deebo, the pass rusher and the wide receiver. It all makes sense. But now the whole draft comes crashing down. In the third round, they took Jalen Hurd, a wide receiver / running back out of Baylor. All right, this seems like a luxury pick and a really, really bad pick. I saw plenty of mocks that had him in the 5th round, in the 6th round. This seems like terrible value at pick number 3 in the 3rd round. What they really needed at this point was another cornerback or a guard to help the offensive line or to help their secondary, even a safety. Anything like that would have been great right here, especially if you could have traded down and taken advantage of all of the great players in the 2nd through 4th rounds. Instead, you kind of took a luxury pick that was overvalued, kind of like they did a wide receiver last year. Anyway, so that's where things started to turn for the worse. Then we get to the fourth round and we take a punter. Can't do it. Not going to do it. Can't take a punter in the fourth round and end up good on my list. So they take a punter, fifth round linebacker. At least they had 3 6th-round picks where they take a tight end, offensive tackle, and cornerback. But I mean, at that point, it's too little too late, right? How do you take a punter in the fourth round? It just makes no sense to me. That sounds like a loser's mentality. If you think you need a good punter, that means your team stinks, right? What you want to do is build a team that doesn't need to punt very often, and then you don't care about your punter, right? Makes sense? Anyway, that's, the whole draft just fell apart, and I'm done with this. Great start, horrible finish, and in this division, that gets you last. All right. So the other 3 teams, Arizona, Los Angeles, and Seattle, I think they all had great drafts. I went back and forth deciding who was going to be the best, who was going to be third. So I ended up giving the Rams third. All right. At one point while I was doing this analysis, I had them at first, but I've dropped them all the way down to third. So I really like what they did. But first, let's recap where they were last season. The Rams finished the year 13-3. They made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Very nice. Offensive DVOA was second. Defense was 17th. A little bit surprising there. So they made a lot of trades. So let's try to go through this here. They traded away their 31st pick, their first-round pick, and their 203rd pick for 45 and 79 from Atlanta. And then at 45, right, so they got that 45th pick. They traded back again to 56 and 101. Okay, so that's 2 trade backs right at the start. And then they traded back one more time, that 56th pick to 61, and they picked up an extra 5th-round pick. So that's 1, 2, 3 trade downs at the top of the draft. I think this is a good move for a Rams team that's kind of top-heavy where the salary comes in. They've paid a lot of guys a lot of money at the top. So you need a lot of darts to throw at the dartboard to hit some inexpensive players in these later rounds, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th-round players that might play for you, okay? So what did they do? They took Taylor Rapp with that 2nd-round pick, safety out of Washington. He could be an immediate impact player. I like this pick. Seems to make sense. Okay, then they trade pick 70. They trade down again with the Bucks, and they get 94 and 99. So they continue to trade down. I love it, love it, love it. Okay, so then they pick up my favorite player, my favorite running back in this draft, Darrell Henderson at running back from Memphis. This guy is going to immediately come in and take over for Todd Gurley. All right, Todd Gurley was injured / stunk last year at the end of the season. Darrell Henderson is a beast. Give me Darrell Henderson, Rookie of the Year right now. I'll take whatever odds you want to give me. 50-1, you probably get something crazy out in Vegas. Darrell Henderson, running back. He will take over for the Rams, and Todd Gurley will not be with the Rams in 2021. All right, so I love that pick. Then they come back with David Long, cornerback out of Michigan. I think that's also a great value, right? I think that's in the 3rd round. And then Bobby Evans, offensive tackle from Oklahoma, right, to round out the 3rd round. Very, very nice. They also traded down again with the Pats, I think twice. They traded up with the Pats to pick 97. And then they also traded up with the Pats again to get pick 134. So they did a lot of moving in this draft. They moved down to get extra picks, which they need. And then they moved up in the later rounds to get guys that they wanted. I really like how they handled this draft. In the 4th round, they took a defensive tackle. 5th round, offensive tackle. 7th round, safety and a linebacker. So I really think you have 3 or 4 guys who are going to make an immediate impact, and you've got some flyers to fill out the roster. I think the Rams handled this draft very nicely, but it just wasn't as good as what some of the other teams did, even though I really, really like it. Okay. And as I'm reading it again, I'm like, how did this, team come in 3rd in this division? Well, I think, Arizona and Seattle just knocked it out of the park, to be honest. And that's why, in any of these other divisions, the Rams would probably be 1st or 2nd. But in the NFC West, they came in 3rd, which I think says a lot going forward for the NFC West. All right, let's move over to number 2 now. I went with Seattle. So a week before the draft, Seattle only had 4 draft picks. Well, coming out of this draft, they ended up with 11 players. It's unbelievable what a job they did. All right, this is going to take a while. Let's try to do this in chronological order, and I'll try not to mess it up. So Seattle's draft started about 3 days before the draft when they traded Frank Clark to Kansas City in a move we talked about a few weeks ago, which I hated for Kansas City because they paid him like $67 million guaranteed when they could have just had D Ford and stayed with him. But anyway, Seattle brought back essentially a 1st round and a 2nd round pick next year. Great deal for them. All right. So then what happens next? Well, then they have their own pick at 21. They trade that pick and go back to pick number 30, and they also pick up a fourth and a fifth rounder. Okay, we're adding more picks. This is going to be a theme for the Seattle Seahawks. Okay, then at pick number 29, with the pick they got from Kansas City, they draft defensive end LJ Collier out of Utah. He seems like a decent pass rusher, should be an immediate impact player, or at least he should start for Seattle. He's certainly not going to replace the production that Frank Clark had. Frank Clark was a Pro Bowl player, a game changer, right? But LJ Collier will at least be a bolster to their defensive line. Okay, then they had pick number 30, but they trade back to 37, right? They trade down seven picks, and pick up picks for a fourth rounder and a fifth rounder. So now they have two extra fourths and two extra fifths. We are gaining more assets. I love it. Okay, then we trade pick number 37. We'd go down another 10 spots and pick up an additional third rounder. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, then finally after that, we make a pick in the second round. We take Marquise Blair, safety out of Utah. All right, we love all these Utah players. All right, at the end of the second round, what they go ahead and do is very cool. I think they traded up. They give up some of those assets they acquired earlier, picks 77 and 118 to get to 64 to select DK Metcalf to help out hustle and bustle Russell Wilson. I love this trade. I love the player. I love what they are doing. They created assets and then used some of the extra assets to go up and get players they desired, and that can make an immediate impact this year. Because if you're giving Russell Wilson all that money, you're playing to win right now. You're not really playing for the future. So I love what they did here. Then they traded up. Let me just go through the rest of the trades here real quick. They traded up again from 92 and a fifth rounder. They got up to 88. I believe that was the Cody Barton, another linebacker out of Utah. Unbelievable that they just drafted all Utah players this year. Then they traded back from 114. They traded up in the seventh round. I mean, they were all over the place. Let's see. In the fourth round, they took a wide receiver, a guard, and a safety. In the fifth round, they took a linebacker. In the sixth round, they took a running back and a defensive tackle. In the seventh round, they took a wide receiver, totaling 11 players. Lots of darts thrown at the dartboard. Seattle absolutely has to have this. When you have the highest paid the highest paid quarterback in the league, you've got to find deals somewhere else. And hopefully, with all of these fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh rounders, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys picked from the fourth round or after. Hopefully, a couple of those players can stick, and you've got young cost control players going forward to make up for that quarterback contract. And I love their draft picks. I mean, the first 3 picks, I think, first 4 picks are all great. I think they'll all make an impact. I think it's a great draft. I really liked it, and I loved how they maneuvered themselves, even though they had to give up Frank Clark, a Pro Bowl caliber player. All right, let's move on to my number 1 team in this division, which was the Arizona Cardinals. Now, it's easy for Arizona to be number 1 since they had the first pick, but I think what they did all throughout this draft was just great. I really liked it. So I gave them the number 1, although Seattle, man, did I want to put Seattle number 1 as well. Anyway, last season, Arizona stunk. They were 3-13. Let's see. Offensive DVOA, they were 32nd. For you math majors out there, that's last. And then on defense, they were 18th. So they needed to do a lot of things in this draft, and they did. First of all, they traded Rosen. They got a late second-round pick, which is not great. Ended up getting Andy Isabella for that pick, who was really, really productive at UMass. He received, 1,698 yards last year, which is crazy. That's a lot of yardage. So hopefully he can be an impact player. Certainly, I don't think you got the value for Rosen that you would want. But, I mean, the problem is once you decide you're going to go with Kyle Murray, I mean, what do? Right? It's hard to really blame them. You know, if the market's not there to get, a first round or early second round pick, I mean, you can't hold on to him. You can't have Rosen and Murray going into the training camp. You just got to get rid of him and move on if you believe Kyle Murray is your guy and Rosen is not. So people bash them for the move like, oh, you drafted Rosen last year. Well, you know what? If you feel like you made a mistake at the quarterback position, why muddle through mediocrity or horrible seasons for the next 3 years trying to build around a quarterback you don't believe in? You've got to go ahead and cut the cord, move on from Rosen, and go ahead and take your new quarterback, Kyle Murray. And that's what they did at number 1 pick, quarterback out of Oklahoma, Kyle Murray. Now, if Murray's the answer, then, no one's going to care about Rosen, 3 years down the line. They're going to say, oh, man, Murray's in the Pro Bowl. Murray's leading us to the Super Bowl. Murray's amazing, right? No one will care about Rosen. Now, if Murray stinks and Rosen's good, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble in Arizona. But that's the gamble they made. I love their second-round pick. They got Byron Murphy, cornerback out of Washington. I think on a lot of boards he was the number one quarterback in this class, and he went in the first pick of the second round. I think that's a great deal for Arizona. And then, like I already said, they got Andy Isabella. I think that's a great wide receiver, a great safety blanket for first-year quarterback Kyle Murray. In the third round, at the top, they ended up getting Zach Allen, defensive end out of Boston College. He should really help the defense, right? So you add a pass rusher and a pass defender, right? One of the best cornerbacks in this class and a very solid defensive end out of Boston College. I love that. And then in the fourth round, I think they also did an amazing job getting Hakeem Butler. He was one of my top, I think, 6 wide receivers, and you get him in the fourth round. Why did he fall? Maybe there were some character concerns. People didn't like him. So what? I think he's going to be a great wide receiver, and that's just more weapons for Kyle Murray. Let them all go in together and hopefully get some chemistry going. In the fifth round, they took a safety. Sixth round, they took another wide receiver and a center. And in the seventh rounds, they had 3 picks. They took a offensive tackle, defensive end, and a tight end. So I love all the extra picks in the late rounds. Hopefully some of those picks stick, and you can have some cost control players going forward. And I just think it's a great draft. I mean, if lots of people bashed what they did at the quarterback position, but I think if you realize you made a mistake, just cut the cord and move forward. And hopefully it works out for the Arizona Cardinals with Kyle Murray. So to wrap up the NFC West, I had the San Francisco 49ers at 4, the Los Angeles Rams at 3, the Seattle Seahawks at 2, and the Arizona Cardinals at number 1. So far, this has been by far the strongest division in terms of drafting. I don't even think San Francisco would finish last against some of these other divisions because I did love their first 2 picks. So this is the longest podcast in Daily Fantasy 5's history. So let's end it here. Visit mathradio.com. If you're listening on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and like the show. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.